The cowboy had only $50 to his name when he bought the ranch through a letter, sight unseen. Lonely, weathered by years on the trail, he dreamed only of land to call his own. When he arrived, the place stood quiet, dust curling in the air. Leading his horse to the creek, he stopped cold. Laughter drifted through the reeds, soft and musical. 3 young Apache women, no older than their 20s, bathed in the cool water, their long hair glistening in the sun. The cowboy froze, stunned. His land was not empty. Destiny had already planted its surprise. For a moment, he stood as still as stone, unsure if his weary eyes deceived him. He had faced ambushes, storms, and starvation across endless miles of prairie, yet nothing had caught him so off guard as this scene. The girls laughed freely, tossing water at one another, unaware they were watched. His boots sank softly into the dirt, his breath caught between caution and awe. He had come here for solitude, to escape the noise of the world, but the land seemed to whisper that solitude was not what it intended for him. The horse shifted nervously beside him, blowing through its nostrils as though sensing the tension in its master's chest. The cowboy reached for the reins, but his hand trembled slightly. He had learned respect on the frontier, respect for the land, for its people, for survival. He knew barging into this moment would shatter the fragile peace of the canyon. He lowered his head, meaning to slip away unseen. But the desert had a way of exposing every secret, and before he could turn, one of the women's sharp eyes caught his figure in the shadows. The laughter stopped. Silence filled the canyon, heavy as iron. The women turned, their gazes piercing through the reeds. One stepped forward, her face wet with water and sunlight, her long braids dripping. She was tall, proud, her expression unflinching. "You stand on land that is not empty," she called out, her voice steady and strong. The cowboy raised his hands slowly, palms open, showing no weapon. His voice, worn from dust and years of silence, broke the still air. "I meant no harm," he said softly. "I bought this land with coin, but I see now it holds more than I reckoned." The women glanced at one another, their silence filled with questions. The tallest narrowed her eyes, stepping closer, never lowering her guard. "Coin cannot buy what already breathes with life," she replied, her tone neither hostile nor welcoming, but firm with truth. The cowboy bowed his head, tipping his weathered hat, feeling the weight of her words. "Then maybe it bought me a lesson," he admitted. "A ranch is just dirt without those who walk it." For the first time, he saw more than strangers. He saw guardians of a place he had yet to understand. The second woman, younger and curious, tilted her head. She studied his face, the scars carved by years of wind and hardship. "Why come here?" she asked, her English marked by careful rhythm. The cowboy swallowed, the dryness of the desert in his throat. "I was tired of drifting," he said. "A man needs roots, even if all he can afford is soil no one else wants." His honesty hung in the air like a fragile thread. The women exchanged glances again, and though their suspicion remained, something softer flickered in their expressions. Perhaps pity, perhaps recognition. Still, danger lingered in the canyon air. The women were not alone in spirit. The land itself stood behind them. The cowboy knew that with one wrong word he could become an enemy. His heart pounded, yet he held himself steady, the weight of his rifle at his side a reminder of how easily blood could stain this moment. But he would not lift it, not against them. He breathed deeply, letting the desert silence steady his voice. "I only came to the water for my horse," he said. "If I've trespassed, I'll leave. No land is worth disrespecting its people." The third woman, smallest of the 3, stepped closer to her sisters, her eyes gentler, but her stance strong. She seemed to read the cowboy's heart, as though searching for falsehood. When she spoke, her words were softer, though still edged with caution. "Many men come here with greed," she said. "They take, they burn, they leave scars on the earth. Why should we believe you are not the same?" The cowboy exhaled slowly, the truth heavy in his chest. "Because I ain't got much left to take," he answered quietly. "Only thing I'm looking for is peace." For a long moment, silence stretched again, broken only by the trickle of the creek. The women studied him, their dark eyes deep with thought, their hands hovering at the edges of caution. The cowboy lowered his gaze to the water, its surface shimmering with sunlight. He thought of all the miles he had ridden, the loneliness gnawing at his bones, the $50 that had bought him this place. And now, standing at its heart, he realized the land itself had chosen what it would give him, not solitude, but the chance for connection if he dared to take it. The tallest woman finally broke the silence, her voice like stone softened by time. "You may stay," she said, though her words carried a condition. "But know this, land cannot be owned. If you walk here, you walk with us, not over us." The cowboy nodded, his chest heavy with relief, his heart touched by a respect he could not put into words. "Then I'll walk beside," he said firmly. The women regarded him one last time, then turned back to the creek. For the first time, the cowboy felt the land breathe around him, alive, unyielding and no longer his alone. That night, he camped near the edge of the ranch house, its walls weathered and thin, the roof caving slightly from years of neglect. As he sat by the fire, the sound of distant laughter carried faintly from the creek. It wasn't mocking laughter. It was life, unshaken by hardship. The cowboy leaned back against his saddle, staring at the stars above. He had bought a ranch for $50, but what he had truly found could never be bought. The West had given him not solitude, but a story he had not expected, written in the voices of 3 strangers by the water. The women saw him, startled but unafraid, their eyes sharp as arrows. One stepped forward, a spirit of fire in her gaze. "This land is ours too," she said firmly, defiance ringing through the canyon air. The cowboy lowered his hat, hands open, voice calm. "I bought this ranch, but I reckon there's room for more than me." Silence stretched before laughter broke the tension. The women exchanged looks, curiosity softening their stance. For a man who came searching for solitude, he had found something far greater: companionship, challenge, and the spark of an untold story in the Wild West. The tallest woman, her braids still damp from the creek, studied him with unwavering eyes. "Words are easy," she said, her voice steady, each syllable sharp as flint. "Trust is not." The cowboy nodded, accepting the truth in her tone. He had learned long ago that the frontier respected actions more than promises. "Then let me prove it," he said softly, almost more to himself than to them. The women remained guarded, yet their eyes betrayed a flicker of curiosity. Something about the man, worn by the road yet softened by sincerity, hinted he might not be like the others. That night, the women did not vanish into the shadows as he half expected. Instead, they lingered at the edges of the camp, their presence quiet but undeniable. The cowboy kept the fire burning low, offering bread and water from his meager supplies. Though they did not approach, they watched him, testing his patience. He said little, letting the crackle of the flames carry the silence. The stars stretched endless above, and in that wide desert sky, the rancher realized something strange. He did not feel alone anymore, even though no words were exchanged. Their nearness changed the night. At dawn, the cowboy woke to the sound of soft footsteps. One of the women, the youngest of the 3, approached the dying embers of his fire. She crouched low, her dark eyes cautious but curious. Without a word, she placed kindling on the coals, coaxing the flame alive again. Their eyes met briefly, hers testing, his grateful. She said nothing, only returned to her sisters. The cowboy smiled faintly beneath his hat. It was a small act, but on the frontier, small acts spoke louder than grand speeches. He knew then a door had cracked open, if only slightly. The days stretched into a rhythm of quiet coexistence. The cowboy worked on repairing the ranch house, its roof sagging, its walls eaten by years of neglect. From a distance the women watched, their laughter occasionally drifting on the breeze as they went about their own tasks near the creek. He never approached them uninvited, and in turn they never interfered. Yet little by little, invisible threads were woven between them, a nod shared across the field. A piece of bread left by the fire, a glance that held no hostility, but instead a growing curiosity about the other. One evening, as the sun bled red across the horizon, the oldest sister approached while he sat sharpening his knife. Her steps were measured, her presence commanding. "Why did you really come here?" she asked, her voice low but demanding. The cowboy looked up, his face shadowed by the fading light. He considered lying, but the desert had a way of punishing falsehood. "I came here because I was tired of being a ghost," he admitted. "Riding from place to place, never belonging anywhere. I thought a ranch would give me roots, but maybe what I needed was people." Her expression didn't change immediately, but her eyes softened just enough to show his words had struck somewhere deeper than she wished to admit. She sat across from him, firelight dancing on her strong features. "Belonging is not bought," she said firmly. "It is earned." The cowboy nodded, the knife resting in his calloused hands. "Then I'll earn it," he answered simply. His words weren't bold, nor were they desperate. They were steady, like the man himself. For the first time, the woman allowed silence to rest between them, not as a barrier, but as the beginning of something new. The younger sisters followed her lead in their own ways. One brought him herbs when his horse limped from a strained leg, showing him how to rub the animal's muscles to ease the pain. The other, more cautious, began asking questions in halting English about his travels, places he'd seen, dangers he'd faced. Slowly, the canyon filled with conversation instead of silence. The cowboy never pressed them for more than they offered, but he listened closely, treating each word as if it were a gift. He realized then that companionship wasn't something claimed. It was something freely given, little by little. Trouble, however, never stayed far in the Wild West. One evening, distant riders appeared on the horizon, dust rising in their wake. The cowboy's instincts sharpened immediately. Raiders or drifters, it didn't matter, danger was coming. He saddled his horse and checked his rifle, ready to defend what little he had. The women, too, sensed the threat. The tallest sister stood beside him, her chin high, her presence as unyielding as stone. "They will test you," she said quietly. The cowboy glanced at her, surprised by her calm. "Then let them," he answered, his voice firm. "This land has enough scars already." When the riders came, their laughter carried like broken glass across the canyon. They demanded whiskey, food, and worse, eyes lingering too long on the women by the creek. The cowboy stepped forward, hat low, rifle steady in his hands. "You'll find neither here," he said, his tone sharp as the barrel pointed at them. Tension crackled in the air, heavy and dangerous. The raiders shifted, calculating whether to fight or retreat. Behind him, he felt the women's steady presence, their silence like an unspoken vow. For the first time in years, he wasn't standing alone against the storm. The standoff stretched like a taut rope. Finally, the leader spat in the dirt, glaring at the cowboy. "Not worth the trouble," he muttered, pulling his horse back. One by one, the raiders turned, their hooves pounding away into the desert. The cowboy lowered his rifle, chest heaving with relief. For a moment, the canyon was silent again, the air heavy with what might have been. Then he turned to find the women watching him, their expressions unreadable. But in their eyes was something new, not suspicion, not caution, but a flicker of trust earned in the fire of danger. That night, the campfire burned brighter than before. The youngest sister smiled for the first time, her laughter quick and light as wind. The second told stories of their people, her words carrying the weight of generations. The oldest, still proud and guarded, studied the cowboy with new eyes, not as an intruder, but as a man who had stood his ground without faltering. The cowboy listened, humbled, his heart swelling with something he had not felt in years. He had come for land, but what he was building was something richer, bond, respect, perhaps even the beginnings of a family. When dawn came again, the cowboy saddled his horse as usual, preparing for the long day's work. But this time he wasn't alone. The women approached, each carrying bundles of herbs, tools, and baskets. Without words, they joined him at the ranch house, their hands strong, their resolve steady. Side by side, they began repairing the broken walls, weaving strength where there had once been weakness. The cowboy glanced at them, gratitude swelling in his chest. He had not asked them to stay, nor to help, but they had chosen to. That choice meant more than any deed of land. By evening, the house stood stronger than before, patched by hands that worked with care and purpose. The cowboy stood in the doorway, gazing at the women resting in the glow of the firelight. He realized that the emptiness which had haunted him for years had vanished. The ranch was no longer just dirt and wood. It was alive, filled with laughter, with stories, with the warmth of human connection. He had bought it for $50, but the true price had been patience, respect, and courage. And the reward was something money could never buy, a place he finally belonged.